Hi everyone, this is Mindy Eggen for Scrapbook and Cards Today magazine, and today I'm going to be creating this spring blessings card. First, I want to take a look at the products I'll be using. I have these single stitched circles, flower medley, stamp die, and stencil. I'll be using a sentiment off of the You Are My World stamp set. And then I also have a snowy background. These are from Gina K Designs. For inks, I have Barely There, Sunkissed Floral, Jelly Bean Green, Dark Sage, and Sky Blue. I'm also going to be using Harbor from Concord and Ninth, Versifying Clair, and Limestone ink from Altenew. The first thing that I'm going to do is stamp out the images that I want to use on my card project. So I picked out these images from the Flower Medley set, and I'm stamping them onto layering weight white cardstock. Now, one of my favorite techniques when I'm going to be ink blending with a stencil is I like to ink up my images in a light color first. So I like to use limestone, but any kind of maybe craft ink or any other light gray ink would work for this. This way, I'm not risking smearing any black ink when I do my ink blending. So I'm going to leave those images in my Misty tool, and now to do the ink blending, I'm also going to be bringing in my double background grip mat from Gina K Designs. On one side, it is a double background stamp, but on the flip side, you can use it as a sticky mat to hold your cardstock and stencils in place. Then I'm going to take the first layer of the stencil, line it up with my large floral image, and I'm pressing down so that the stencil is stuck to that grip mat and won't move around when I'm ink blending. Using a detail blending brush from Gina K Designs, I am going to start with the Barely There ink, and I am going to be starting on the outer edges of the petal. Now, this ink is a very light, so I will have to go over it numerous times to really intensify it and get it to show up, but I liked it because it was such a soft color. It kind of adds a nice, warm, peachy tone to the outer edges of my petal. Now, once I'm done with the ink blending using the Barely There ink, I'm going to bring in the Sun-Kissed Coral, and again, I'll be using a detail blending brush for this. Normally, when I'm ink blending, I like to start off of the cardstock and work my way on, but for this color, I wanted to start in the center. I wanted that center point to be the darkest area and then blend out about halfway towards the edge of the petal. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of hovering over the center of the flower, and I'm already starting to do little circular motions. So that way, when I go to my paper, I'm not coming into it so harsh. I'm kind of already having that circular movement, and that's going to help eliminate any harsh lines. Then I can just peel up my stencil and I can shift this up to the next area that I want to work on, which is the small flower at the top. For this one, I'm going to be using Blue Sky, and Blue Sky is a very nice bright blue. So I am going to go very light-handed, meaning I'm not going to apply a lot of pressure. Start at the base of the flower and blend up towards the outer edges, just very softly. Now I'm going to work on the leaves. Now, if you notice with this stencil, it is a coloring stencil. It is not a layering stencil. So we're not bringing in any additional layers to the images themselves. I want to step up my ink blending by adding two different colors to the leaves. I'm going to start with a jelly bean green ink. I always kind of start in the center or on the stencil itself and then blend my way out towards the tips so it gets lighter. And then I'm going to bring in dark sage. And I don't think people would normally look at dark sage as that contrast color, but I think it really helps add depth to where my leaves would be underneath the flower. So it really adds that contrast and shadow area. And to keep things simple, I'm going to use those same two colors for all of the leaves on the remaining project. Having these detail blending brushes really helps me hone in on those smaller areas, and I don't have to mask off anything because it does kind of control the amount of ink that I'm putting down. I wanted to talk a little bit about why I stamp these in a light ink first. That is something that I commonly do. One of the reasons for it is if I stamp in a black ink first before I do my ink blending, I noticed that even if I would hit it with a heat tool, I sometimes would smear that black ink or some of that color would get into my very light colors. So to avoid that, I stamp in a light color first. It can be a light brown, a light gray, even a light pink. And then I leave everything in my stamping positioner that I'm using. And then when I'm done, I will bring it back to that stamping positioner to re-stamp it. Yes, it can be a little risky if you don't have it properly aligned in your stamping tool, but I find it adds so much effect to my card and it's a lot easier to ink blend. I also find I just get way better results with my colors. So here I position my cardstock back into my Misty. I'm going to stamp it in the VersaFine Clear ink and stamp it down. If you're a little nervous about this part, you could always place acetate over your card project and test it out first to make sure it's properly aligned. Now, because VersaFine Clear does stay wet for a little bit longer, you could either sprinkle on some clear embossing powder for a little bit of extra shine, or I like to just take a heat tool to it to dry that, and then I can line up the coordinating dies and die cut those out. I like to heat set it first, otherwise the ink transfers to my cutting plates. For the background for my card, I am going to be using Breeze cardstock from Spellbinders and the snowy background stamp from Gina K Designs. Even though it's called a snowy background, I think this makes a great splatter background. But to keep it very subtle, I'm going to use a tone on tone look. So here I am placing my cardstock inside of my Misty stamping tool. Now you're going to notice that my cardstock, which is cut to 4¼ by 5½, is a little bit bigger than the actual stamp itself. So I'm going to start by just stamping as much as I can at first. I did put a little bit of repositionable tape on the back of the cardstock, and it kind of just tacks it down for right now so it doesn't stick to the stamp itself. And then I'm going to stamp it in Harbor ink. Now, once I stamp it down, there's going to be just a little bit of a sliver at the very top that doesn't have any of those circles on there. So I'm going to clean the stamp with my tidy towel, wipe it dry with my hand, and then I shifted my cardstock up, and you can see I have that background stamp overhanging on the outside of the Misty. I don't need to worry about that. I'm just going to ink up the very top so I can stamp that down, and that way my entire panel is filled with those splatters or the snowy background. To finish off my stamping, I'm going to do my sentiment right away. This is from the You Are My World stamp set. It says Spring Blessings. I'm stamping that down in black ink onto white cardstock, and then I'm going to use the coordinating die to die cut this out. I will also cut this numerous times from white cardstock to layer it up with my liquid glue that I have in a fine tip bottle. Then off screen, I am going to die cut a circle from the single stitched die set from Gina K Designs. I die cut it twice and I layered it together with my tape runner. Now that I have all the basic components for my card, I can start putting my bouquet together. And I'm going to be using a tape runner just to kind of tack things in place. I really wanted to fill out that little bouquet. So adding a little bit of tape runner, kind of tacking that down. And I want this to frame my circle just a little bit. And I'll have that blue flower just kind of tucking out at the very top. I think it looked really nice and paired great with the color of cardstock. I do plan on popping this up, but first I need to attach my circle to the background because right now I just kind of have that there as a placeholder. So I'm going to use the Gina K Designs foam squares. I'm going to place that over the entire back of the panel, remove the release paper, and then place this on my card front. I'm also going to add some of the foam squares to one side of my floral bouquet. So whatever part of my little floral arrangement that I have that's going to touch the circle, that is where I added the foam squares. I also trimmed some down to add to one side of my sentiment. The other side, I'm going to add that liquid glue. That is going to be the side that overlaps my bouquet. Then to finish the card off, I'm going to use some gold glitter drops. I'm going to start with a large one in the center of the flower, and then just going to embellish around the bouquet. And it's a nice, simple way to add a touch of sparkle to your card project. I love that subtle background that we have with the snowy background stamp, just a little bit of texture, but not overpowering the design, and these beautiful spring colors and spring greeting. I hope you enjoyed today's spring inspiration. Thank you all so much for spending time with me today.